We're calling all writers, storytellers, and creators of tales of the paranormal and supernatural. Do you have a spine-tingling story that's too chilling to keep to yourself? If the answer is yes, then wherever you are in the world, the Haunted UK Fiction Podcast wants to hear from you. Whether you're a published author, an aspiring writer, or someone with a natural gift for storytelling, this is your chance to share your work with a global audience of listeners who crave the eerie, the unexplained, the otherworldly. We're looking for original fictional short stories or novellas with strong paranormal or supernatural themes. Your stories can be suspenseful, mysterious, atmospheric, terrifying, thought-provoking, even darkly magical. If your story is selected, we'll professionally narrate, record, mix, and master it into an audiobook-style format, then feature it on the show. You'll get a copy of the finished production to use however you like, and you'll retain full ownership of your work. There are no fees, no contracts, and no hidden jargon. Your story deserves to be heard. Whether it's a tale that's been haunting your notebook for years, or maybe something that you're finally ready to unleash, this is your chance to bring it to life. To submit your story for consideration, email us at hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com. And don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at hauntedukfiction. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to Haunted UK Fiction, a sister podcast to the Haunted UK, which features original flash fiction, short stories, and novellas with paranormal themes. All stories you will hear were written by a collection of talented writers, authors, and storytellers, both independent and professional. In today's episode, we'll be reading The Lady of the Stairs, which was sent in to us by LJ Aldon. Lisa Aldon, writing as LJ Aldon, is the author of Riddle of the Jeweled Cipher and the international semi-finalist award winner Riddle of the Haunted Hoard, the two published novels in the Pucci Riddle Mystery series. She currently lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, USA, where she also works as an engineer and consciousness leadership consultant. Her passions are helping the planet evolve, her family, and her dog. Her influences are Agatha Christie, Ellery Queen, Laurie R. King, Catherine Kurtz, Deborah Turner Harris, and Dan Brown. She also loves helping earthbound spirits cross over and has had many evidence-based encounters. Some of the encounters of ghosts in this story are true, but you'll have to guess which ones. So get comfortable. Grab a little something to sip on, perhaps cuddle up under a blanket to help offset the chills coming your way. And let's dive into the story. The train slid into Waverley train station in Edinburgh, Scotland under a pewter December sky. Pucci spotted Varve at once. Tall, slender, Italian elegance, a quick stride that turned into a run. They met halfway in a tangle of arms and sudden tears. Laughter muffled by wool. Pucci, almost a foot shorter, both in height and hairstyle, looked up and said, "It's so good to see you." "Let's not baptize the station in cappuccino," Randy said, whisking the cup out of Pucci's hand from behind Varv's back. She wrapped Varv in a hug of her own. "So great to see you again." Randy's blue eyes sparkled as she brushed back her blonde hair, looking upon her two dear friends. The three of them floated through the turnstiles on the small tide of being together. They took a cab south, the city falling behind them in a wash of stone and steeple. Fields rolled out in muted greens. Woodland gathered, dark and watchful. They'd save the big news for dinner. Jobs, almost mistakes, the kind of men who text mostly in emojis. For now, they watched Scotland roll by, stone walls, bare branch trees, a soft shawl of mist. The taxi drove south, through small towns towards Gorglen Woodland Park in Midlothian. As it rounded the last corner less than an hour later, the castle came into view. Strath Hammond, an imposing circular tower, turrets shouldering the sky, a flag snapping from the uppermost crown. The walls were burnt orange, hewn from the quarry upriver. Arms of peridot and maroon ivy wrapped the tower's belly in a giant hug. Two enormous pots flanked the arched entrance, each cradling a pine tree 20 feet high, dressed for Christmas in soft pinpricks of light. Across the grass a barn owl left its perch and skimmed low to the gloved hand of a falconer. A knot of children watched, spellbound, while the wind carried one of their hats away. "Pucci," Varv breathed, "you brought us to a fairy tale." "Discount fairy tale," Pucci grinned. "Still counts." They were admiring the woodland when a familiar voice made her heart leap into her throat. "Miss Riddle." "Braddon," she whispered to herself, holding on the moment like a dream. He was taller than she remembered from the flight out of Chicago. Braddon McNevin, lean and broad-shouldered, carried himself with an easy elegance in a navy jacket, with a tartan waistcoat. His short brown hair struck the perfect balance between tidy and effortless. A faint beard had arrived since their flight. His moonstone eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, sending warmth through Pucci that she couldn't understand, but didn't want to try. "What are you doing here?" they asked together, and laughed. "My friends and I are staying for a few nights," Pucci said, as Varv and Randy drew up. "Rosslyn Chapel tomorrow. Will you introduce me to your friends?" "Randy Backlund, Vavada Conti. This is Braddon McNevin. We met on the plane from Chicago to London." Suddenly, a woman in a black dress with a crisp white apron hurried out of the castle toward them. She curtsied. "My lord," she said breathless, "you'd wanted in the main dining room." Behind his shoulder, Randy mouthed, "My lord." Pucci shrugged and lifted a hand. "I have no idea." "Tell them I'll come directly," Braddon said. "And would the three of you join me for a drink? 5 o'clock in the library?" "We'd be delighted," Pucci said, and then wondered if one should curtsy to an earl. Could she even curtsy? He spared her the decision with a nod and a purposeful stride back into the castle. "Only you, Pucci," Randy murmured, grinning. "You get on a plane and befriend an earl." His card said Mr., not Duke, not an earl, Mr. Pucci protested, pink with pleasure nonetheless. The library felt like exhaling into warmth. Oak panelling, the quiet glow of old stories, a tree near the tall windows stitched with embroidered snowflakes and red baubles, dressed for the holidays. On a low table a bottle of whiskey waited with a jug of water and a small congregation of glasses. The fire crackled and hissed, casting eerie shadows that danced among the books. Braddon stood by the large windows in a circular sitting area, fields drawn in winter greens beyond. "Welcome to my castle," he said, with a roguish tilt that suggested he was amused by the phrase, even as he owned it. He reached for Pucci's hands with old-world courtesy. For a heartbeat, she forgot which century she occupied. Warmth went up her arms. He seemed to feel it too, and released her gently, filing the moment away. They poured water and whiskey, the amber liquid slightly burning Pucci's throat, as the magical elixir burst into multiple flavours on her tongue. She let out a moan of delight. Somewhere beyond the panelling, another moan sounded, low and mournful. Pipes, perhaps, or the castle sighing for the night. "We've heard Strathammond is haunted," Varv said, folding into a leather chair. "Which haunting?" Braddon's eyes twinkled. "We've a few." "Plural?" Randy blinked. "The famous one is the Lady of the Stairs. Around the late 1400s there was a woman who was a mistress of one of my ancestor's lads. His vengeful wife locked her up in one of the castle turrets, where she perished from not eating. Some psychics have seen her. She walks the stairways at night." "That's a lie," a voice hissed in Pucci's ear. Warm breath prickled her cheek. She nearly choked on her whiskey. Randy and Varv felt the ripple. Not wanting to say anything in front of Braddon, they raised their eyebrows in question. With a sharp nod, Pucci acknowledged. A ghost had indeed just spoken. Braddon continued his story, oblivious, but the library changed for her. Air colder at the edges, the fire's light a little thinner. Somewhere in the stone, a sound like footfalls shifted and faded. Pucci Riddle had a gift, though some days she called it a curse. She could see and speak with ghosts, but that wasn't something she had shared with Braddon before he retired for the night. "Ladies, I must leave you. I have an early morning. Please stay and enjoy the ambience of the castle." He bowed, and then left the three of them alone. "I'm pooped as well, Pucci," Randy said, standing, and Varv nodded. "We'll see you in the morning," Varv said, giving Pucci a hug. Left alone in the library, Pucci was wide awake, so she decided to wander the castle. She thought she was ascending the correct staircase to her room, but something didn't look right. She kept climbing. On a landing, the temperature dropped in a way that felt intentional. One step, then another. Pucci's breath silvered in the air. A woman stood at the head of the short stair, blue dress falling in elegant, simple lines, sleeves belled at the wrists, hair pale as blown frost. Her hands were on her hips, her mouth a firm line of annoyance, like a lady who was being kept waiting for too long. "I told you it was a lie," she said, voice even, close, and everywhere. Pucci, recovering from gazing on this amazing apparition, replied, "What is a lie?" Instead of answering, the ghost asked, "What are you doing in my house?" "What are you still doing here?" Pucci asked, slightly affronted by her blunt question. "And what did you mean by telling me Braddon's story was a lie?" Pucci tried again, slowly ascending the stairs, getting colder by the minute. Suddenly, the ghost's energy changed. Confusion and astonishment were evident on her translucent face. Pucci could see her features more clearly as the ghost came closer, her gown rustling. Her spectral hand paused at Pucci's throat, above the jewelled cipher. Gold filigree, moonlit blue gems, a quicksilver sheen running over them. Recognition flared, tender and fierce. "Where did you get that?" she whispered reverently. Pucci, taken aback, backed away slightly, feeling the jewel and the gold chain turning cold, even through her sweater. "Are you the Lady of the Stairs?" Pucci asked. The ghost nodded, not taking her eyes off the necklace. A small tilt of the head. "I died protecting one like it. Men took me, not a jealous wife. They called me a mistress so no one would ask questions. That's why I said the Earl's story was a lie. They wanted the light that runs through these pieces." Her eyes lifted, steady and piercing. "Do you understand what you wear?" "I know it has a task," Pucci said, hand rising to the frigid jewel. "What keeps you here?" But the lady's outline thinned, as if she was stepping behind a veil. The cold eased down the stair like a held breath finally released. She was gone. Morning found Pucci already in her walking shoes. She needed to think, and she thought best by walking. The concierge mentioned ruins near the old quarry, stones borrowed long ago to build the castle. "Bare left along the river, you cannae miss it," he said. Except the pull she felt tugged right, like a hand under the elbow, and she trusted it. The air felt heavy, charged, with something she couldn't quite name. This place, these grounds, there was a strange familiarity about them. In her mind's eye, she pictured a structure, a tower and a courtyard, details vivid yet fragmented, like memories half-remembered. The river made its low, eternal conversation with stone. Crows argued in the bare trees. With every breath she could smell the decomposing leaves and the bark of trees rotting in the moisture. The moss was so thick in areas it reminded her of the green pincushion her grandmother used to wear strapped to her wrist like a puffy bracelet. She approached a divergence in the path and felt the energetic pull getting stronger. The pull was to the left this time. The forest grew denser, its shadows pressing in around her. A sagging fence of twisted wire and splintered posts separated her from a field of brittle grass. 2 long-haired cows, hairy coos, watched, chewing solemnly. A murder of crows erupted from the clearing. Beyond them, a dip in the land cradled a ruin. Blackened stones, roof long devoured by time, a small tower clinging stubbornly to what was left of a wall. The place was both ordinary and heavy with attention. A voice whispered an eerie message of desperation, beckoning her for help. The whisper carried on the breeze, travelled too fast for her to make out the exact words. Pucci stepped through a tumble in the stone, palm to the cold to steady herself. The world shifted. The ruin stirred, then rose from the ground like a time-lapse movie. Walls climbing skyward, windows materializing into place, and heavy doors sealing the space. The interior came alive around her. Flickering torchlight, polished wood, and the scent of beeswax and smoke. Laughter and music echoed through the chamber, distant yet vivid, as though the past had never left. People were dancing in the bailey. The smell of cooked meat filled her nostrils, and her mouth watered. A young woman entered the scene laughing. She was beautiful the way a wildflower is beautiful, entirely herself. A red-haired youth crossed the room toward her, and the look between them turned the air into a vow. "Amaryllis," the young man and Pucci whispered together. Then it was gone. December again. Grey light. A tiny insect, a pill-bug, armour-plated, resolute, trundled over Pucci's sleeve. She set it gently on the moss. "Please help me," a voice said, clear as a bell in fog. The pull led Pucci around the tower to where stones met in a rough seam, an old scar. An opening yawned behind a low ledge, dark and tight as a swallowed secret. She reached up into the gap. Something not of this world touched her fingers. Hard, cold, deeply sad. Her heart raced and then steadied. She opened her energy to communicate with the apparition. "What happened?" Pucci asked. "Why are you here?" "They killed me," the voice said, the grief of it old and still somehow new. "They hid my body in the wall." Pucci laid both hands on the rough wall, willing her energy into the stones. "This is not your tomb," she said. "Break away." She saw it in a flash, laid into the earth like a memory it couldn't bear. Men's faces hard as mallets, the girl falling, the careful brick-by-brick lie to silence the truth. Pucci swallowed and said it again, fiercer. "Break away." The air tightened and then released, as if a tether were cut. Gratitude flooded through her with such force that her knees buckled. She braced herself and breathed until the world balanced. On the path above stood the figure from the vision, Amaryllis, her long blonde hair gently waving in an ancient ethereal breeze, smiled. Her periwinkle dress, adorned with delicate white embroidered flowers on the bodice, glowed like a full moon on a dark night. "Thank you," she said. "Your energy helped me. She stopped and stared at Pucci, eyes brightening with a shock that melted into joy. "Lilias?" The name lifted through Pucci like a swallowed note. For a heartbeat she was doubled. Herself and not herself. Wearing a gown of similar cut, carrying an older steadiness. "Aye," Pucci heard herself answer. An echo inside an echo. "I've missed you, dear heart. I didn't know. I should have protected—" "You would have died with me," Amaryllis said. "No reproach, only truth. They said I didn't have what they sought. I think they wanted the cipher. Did they find Davinia?" "Aye." Pucci's grief spanned timelines. "I have seen Davinia. She haunts the stair in the great tower, yet the light keeps what matters. My present self will set it right." A tall, red-haired youth appeared at Amaryllis' side. With quiet tenderness, he took her hand. "Come," he said, voice gentle. "It is time." "Alexander," she breathed, and the way she said his name warmed the winter. They turned, and the air folded them away like pages closing. Pucci stood listening to the land, the gurgling river, wind shouldering the grass, crows cawing. "Another soul released into the light," she said to the small traveller by her boot. The millibug went about its slow, undramatic business. "It is done." She bowed her head and let the silence answer. Slowly she turned and walked back to the castle, observing a leaf illuminated by the morning sun, softly detaching from its life-giving branch and descending. They toured Rosslyn Chapel that afternoon, a hymn in stone. Back at the castle, the library welcomed them again. Late afternoon light on the window panes, the fire's soft gossip, the Christmas tree's patient glitter. Braddon poured 2 neat drams and handed one to Pucci, their fingers almost touching. "You look as though you've made a friend," he said softly. "Perhaps I have." She lifted her glass. "To telling the truth about the past." "To telling the truth," he echoed, and the whiskey lit a small sun in her chest. The castle settled around them for the evening. Pucci went at last to her room, travel-tired but heart awake. She stood by the window for a time, the grounds a suggestion in the dusk, the wind a low, haunted whistle along the stone, like someone far away trying to remember a song. She turned to undress and paused. The jewelled cipher necklace she'd worn since Grand Cayman, cold as fresh snow against her skin in the stairwell, steadying as a heartbeat in the ruin, was not on the bedside table where she'd placed it. In its place lay a single white rose, quietly luminous as if lit from within. It glowed faintly in the lamplight, a bloom she recognized from the chapel carvings and from a vision older than stone. For a breath, she felt both heartbroken and complete, as if the necklace had never truly belonged to her at all, but had been waiting for the moment it could go where it was needed. A draught drew through the room, a curious, bright cold that brushed her cheek like a kiss and was gone. Somewhere far down the corridor, a door eased shut. The fire below popped softly, the sound rising up the chimney like a small, contented laugh. Pucci touched the petals. They were cool and impossibly real. "Sleep well," she whispered. Morning would come cold and clean. She'd tell Braddon what she could and keep what she must. But for now, she lay back and let the castle listen to her breathing. The rose on the table a pale moon in a small night, the necklace gone to whatever work waited for it in the dark. Outside, the flag tugged at its rope. The river kept speaking in its patient tongue. In the library, the tree held its star. And the stones in Strathammond, behind the walls along the stair, the old story settled truer than before. And from very far away, or very near, the faintest sound of footsteps descending a stair faded into nothing at all. That brings us to the end of this episode. We truly hope you enjoyed this tale of hauntings and mysteries. If you would like to hear more from LJ Aldon, you can find her social media and contact information in the show's notes. If you have an original story that would send a chill down our spines and you would like to submit it for review, simply send it in to hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com. That's hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com. Until next time, stay safe and take care.